My children stopped calling me 2 years ago. No birthdays, no holidays, no visits. At first, I told myself, they were just busy. Then I stopped lying to myself. They had moved on, with their lives. Without me, I stayed quiet, because love can make a man accept silence longer than he should. But one morning, out of nowhere, my phone started ringing. My son, my daughter, both in the same week. They said they missed me. They said family matters, but I knew better, because people don't usually come back out of love right when money appears. My name is Daniel Whitmore. I'm 63 years old, and if there is one pain I never learned how to prepare for, it was not betrayal from a brother, or humiliation from family, or even losing money. It was being forgotten by my own children while I was still alive. People talk a lot about heartbreak as if it only belongs to young people: a failed marriage, a broken engagement, a relationship that didn't survive. But there is another kind of heartbreak people almost never talk about, the kind that happens slowly, quietly, the kind where nobody slams a door. Nobody screams, nobody tells you it's over, they just stop showing up. And one day, you realize the people you built your life around have quietly learned how to live without you. I have 2 children, my son, Ryan, and my daughter, Emily. When they were young, I thought I was doing everything a father was supposed to do. I worked long hours, yes, too long sometimes, but I never missed a bill, never let them go without what they needed. I coached Ryan's little league team for 3 summers. I helped Emily build a cardboard solar system for a school project and stayed up until 2 in the morning painting Saturn's rings because she wanted them to look real. I was there, maybe not perfectly, but truly. Their mother, Linda, died 12 years ago, after a short illness. That changed everything in ways I didn't fully understand at the time. After she was gone, I became 2 people at once: father and mother, provider and comfort, disciplinarian and shoulder to cry on. I did my best. Sometimes my best was tired, sometimes impatient, sometimes quiet in ways children misunderstand, but it was still my best. When Ryan got into college, I paid what scholarships didn't cover. When Emily wanted to move to Chicago after graduate school, I gave her money for the apartment deposit and told her not to worry about paying me back. I never asked for much in return: a phone call now and then, a holiday dinner, an occasional reminder that I still existed in the part of their lives that wasn't practical. For a while, that happened, not often, but enough. Then slowly, it changed. Ryan got married first. His wife, Melissa, was polished, intelligent, and always just a little too polite. The kind of person who smiled warmly while keeping one hand on the door, making it clear the visit had an expiration date. Emily changed after her promotion at work. She started speaking in the careful language of people who live inside calendars and airport terminals. Everything became crazy right now, or we'll find a time soon. Soon is a dangerous word. It sounds like hope. Most of the time, it means no. At first I made excuses for them. They have careers. They have relationships. They're building lives. That's what I told myself every time Thanksgiving became maybe next weekend, every time Christmas dinner turned into a short video call. Every time my birthday was reduced to a message that said, "Hope you're doing something nice today." Eventually, even those became less frequent. Then 2 years ago, I had a fall in my garage. Nothing dramatic. I slipped on a patch of oil near the workbench and hit the side of my ribs on a metal cabinet. It hurt badly enough that a neighbor drove me to urgent care, where I spent 6 hours being scanned, examined, and reminded by cheerful strangers that healing takes longer at my age. That night, sitting alone in my kitchen with bruised ribs and a paper bag of prescriptions, I called both of my children. Ryan didn't answer. Emily sent a text: "In meetings all day. Everything okay?" I stared at that message for a long time, then I typed, fell in the garage. At urgent care. Just got home. Her reply came 14 minutes later, oh no. Glad you're home now. Rest up, that was it. No call, no offer to come by, nothing. Ryan called the next evening, not because he had listened to the voicemail, because Emily had mentioned it. Hey, Dad, he said. You alright? I remember the exact tone. Casual. Efficient. Like he was checking a weather report. I'm alright. Good, good. There was a pause, then he said he had to run because he and Melissa were heading out for dinner, and something inside me changed, not dramatically, not in anger, more like a door quietly closing. That was the moment I stopped expecting to be part of their lives. I still loved them, of course I did, but love and expectation are not the same thing. One can survive after the other dies. Over the next year, I saw them less than ever. Ryan came by once, for 27 minutes, to borrow an old ladder he could have bought himself. Emily visited on Father's Day for 40 minutes and spent most of it answering emails with one eye on her phone. I began to understand something. Painful. I was no longer a father in the daily emotional sense. I had become a category, a responsibility, a box to check before moving on to the real day. The holidays became quieter, the house became too large. I began having dinner in the den instead of the dining room because one plate at a large table feels less like peace and more like evidence. That winter, I made a decision, not out of bitterness, out of clarity. I sold the family house, not because I was desperate, because I was done maintaining 4 bedrooms full of ghosts for people who no longer came home. The house sold quickly. The market was strong, and by the time the sale closed, I had more cash than I expected, not generational wealth, not fortune, but enough. Between the sale, my savings, and a small investment account Linda and I had built over the years, I was in a far better financial position than anyone in my family seemed to realize. And I kept it that way, quiet, simple. I bought a modest townhouse in a quieter part of the city. 1 floor. Small yard. Study in the back. Just enough space for a man who had finally stopped waiting for extra chairs to be filled. For the first time in years, my life felt clean, lonely sometimes, yes, but honest. Then one Saturday morning, my phone rang. Ryan. I looked at the screen so long it almost went to voicemail. When I answered, his voice was warmer than I had heard it in years. Dad. That one word already told me something was wrong, or rather, something was needed. Ryan. How've you been? There it was, the question that always comes before the real question. I've been fine. That's good. That's really good. He laughed lightly, as if we were 2 old friends easing into a conversation neither of us needed to explain. Then he said, Melissa and I were thinking maybe we should come by sometime. Have dinner. Catch up. I said nothing for a moment, not because I was emotional, because I was counting. In my head, I was quietly counting how many weeks it had been since he last called. 17. I've been a little busy, I said. Oh. Sure. Of course. Then, too quickly, actually, there's something else. There it was, I figured. Ryan exhaled. We're in a bit of a situation. Of course they were. Melissa's business had unexpectedly slowed. They had overextended a little on a house renovation. There was a loan. Some pressure. Temporary, he assured me. Just temporary. Then came the number, $40,000. He said it gently, almost apologetically, like a man asking for patience rather than money. I listened quietly until he finished. Then I asked, why now? He hesitated. What do you mean? You haven't called in months, Ryan. Another pause, then that soft defensive tone adult children use when they are still trying to sound like good people. It's not like that, Dad. I looked out the window at the small patch of winter grass in my yard. It sounds exactly like that. He didn't speak for several seconds. Then he said, I didn't call just for money. No, I said. You called because you need money. He didn't deny it. That told me more than any explanation could. We ended the call politely, too politely, and as soon as it was over, I sat very still in my chair and waited for the feeling to come, anger, vindication, sadness. What came instead was something colder, recognition. 3 days later, Emily called, and that was when I knew it wasn't a coincidence. When Emily called, she started crying before she got to the point. That was new. Emily had always hated crying in front of people, even as a child. She used to lock herself in the bathroom after arguments with her mother and emerged 10 minutes later with her face washed and her voice steady. As if emotion were something to be tidied away before re-entering the room, so when I heard tears in her voice that afternoon, I knew two things immediately. First, something was very wrong. Second, she had already decided I was her solution. Dad, she said, I didn't know who else to call. That sentence is more powerful than most people realize. It sounds like love. Sometimes it is. Other times, it's desperation wearing love's coat. I let her talk. Her company was restructuring. Her position was under review. Her rent had gone up. She had credit card debt she had hidden from herself until it became impossible to ignore. She kept saying she had been embarrassed, as though embarrassment were some noble explanation for absence. Then finally she asked, not directly at first, just enough leading sentences to make refusal feel cruel. Then the amount came, $12,000, smaller than Ryan's request, but somehow sadder, because Emily's voice still had traces of the child who once asked me to fix broken things she didn't understand. I closed my eyes for a moment and pictured her at 11 years old, sitting cross-legged on the floor with a science project in her lap, telling me the stars had to be exactly right or the whole thing would feel wrong. For one dangerous second, I almost said yes. That is what parenthood does, even after disappointment, even after silence. It keeps a room open in your heart that reason can't always lock. But then I remembered urgent care, the text message, the empty holidays, the small, humiliating way both of my children had learned to check whether I was useful before checking whether I was loved. So I asked her a question. When was the last time you called me just to talk? She went quiet. Dad. No. Answer. She took a breath. I don't know. I do, I said. 8 months. That number hit her harder than I expected, maybe because she knew I was right, maybe because she realized I had noticed every silence, every absence, every polite disappearing act she thought was too small to leave scars. I'm sorry, she whispered, and for the first time, she sounded sincere. That made everything harder, because cruelty is easy to resist, sincerity is not. I believe you're sorry, I said. But that's not the same thing as being present. She started crying again. I know I haven't been there. No. You haven't. I thought you were okay. That sentence almost made me laugh. It's the favorite lie of absent family members. They assume you are okay because your pain hasn't interrupted their schedule. I learned to be okay, I said. That's not the same thing. We ended the call without shouting, no blame. No final dramatic line, just two people sitting on opposite ends of a damaged bridge, finally looking down at the water between them. That evening, I made coffee and sat in the quiet of my townhouse, thinking about Linda. My wife would have known exactly what to say, or maybe not. Maybe she would have been torn too. Linda loved our children with an optimism I could never quite match. She believed people eventually came back to themselves if given enough time and enough grace. I wanted to believe that too, but grace without truth becomes permission, and I had spent too many years mistaking endurance for love. 2 days later, Ryan called again. This time he didn't pretend. "Did Emily call you?" "Yes." He was silent for a moment, then he said, "So you know." "That depends on what I'm supposed to know." "That things are hard right now." I leaned back in my chair. "They seem to become hard for both of you at very convenient times." That irritated him. I could hear it immediately. "So what, you think we're using you?" The audacity of that question, not because it was wrong, because he still hoped I would rescue him from having to say it out loud. "I think," I said slowly, "that neither of my children had time for me until they thought I could solve a problem." He exhaled sharply. "That's not fair." "Then explain the timing." He couldn't. Instead, he tried a different road. "We're family, Dad." There are sentences that sound noble until the wrong person says them. "Family," I repeated. "Interesting. What's that supposed to mean?" "It means family seems to matter most when money enters the room." He got angry then, not loud, but sharp. "You know what? Maybe this is why people have a hard time being around you. Everything becomes a test." That one landed, not because it was true, because it was cruel enough to contain pieces of truth twisted into a weapon. I sat with it for a second before answering. "No, Ryan. This isn't a test. This is memory." He didn't call again after that. A week passed, then another, and in that time, I made a decision, not about the money, about the truth. I invited both of them to dinner at my townhouse on the same Sunday evening and told them I had something important to discuss. They both came, of course they did. Ryan arrived first, carrying a bottle of wine expensive enough to announce intention. Emily came 15 minutes later with flowers and the strained expression of someone who had been rehearsing gratitude in the car. We sat at my dining table, a smaller one than the old house had. Only 4 chairs, no room for pretending this was a large, warm family gathering. Dinner was simple. Roast chicken. Potatoes. Green beans. The kind of meal Linda used to make on quiet Sundays when the children still lived at home and the world felt reparable. For the first 20 minutes, everyone performed. Questions about the townhouse, comments about the neighborhood. Careful smiles. Then Ryan finally said, "You mentioned something important." I folded my napkin and set it beside my plate. "Yes." Both of them looked at me, calm. Alert. Hopeful. I had seen that look before, usually on contractors waiting to hear whether a bid had been approved. "I want to be very clear," I said. "I know why both of you called me." Emily looked down. Ryan shifted in his chair. Neither interrupted. "That doesn't mean I don't love you," I continued. "I do. You are my children. Nothing changes that." Emily's eyes began to shine with tears again. "But love and trust are not the same thing. And right now, I do not trust either of you." That landed exactly where it needed to. Ryan's face hardened with embarrassment. Emily stared at the tablecloth as if it might open and spare her from having to keep listening. "For years," I said, "I told myself you were busy. That life was complicated. That adulthood creates distance." I looked at both of them in turn, but distance was not the problem. Neglect was. No one spoke, so I went on. "You didn't abandon me all at once. That would have been easier. You did it politely. Gradually. In ways small enough to deny if anyone named them. And then, when money became a possibility, suddenly family mattered again. Emily wiped her face. "Dad, I am sorry." "I know," I said. Ryan said nothing. That told me he was still deciding whether he felt guilt or resentment. Then I did something neither of them expected. I slid 2 envelopes across the table, one to Ryan, one to Emily. They looked at them, confused. "What is this?" Ryan asked. "Open them." Inside each envelope was a cashier's check, Ryan's for $10,000, Emily's for $5,000, not enough to solve everything, enough to reveal everything. Ryan looked up immediately. "This is all?" Emily glanced at her brother, then at me, as if she hadn't meant for that question to be asked so quickly, so nakedly, and there it was, the moment, the one I had not wanted to believe would come, not gratitude, calculation. I nodded slowly. "Yes. That is what I am willing to give." Ryan stared at the check like it had insulted him. "I asked for 40. "I know." Emily held hers carefully, almost guiltily. "Dad." I raised my hand gently. "I'm not buying my children," I said. "I'm helping them. There is a difference." Ryan leaned back in his chair, offended. "So that's your lesson? Make us beg and then punish us?" "No," I said. "My lesson is that if you want a relationship with me, it will not be built on requests." The room went still, then I told them the rest. I had updated my will, not to cut them out entirely, but to place most of what I had into a charitable trust in Linda's name, supporting widowed parents and older people living alone. I watched their faces carefully as I said it. Emily looked surprised first, then thoughtful. Ryan looked betrayed, which, given the irony, almost broke something in me. "You're giving it away?" he asked. "Most of it." "Why?" "Because the people who needed my money most were no longer pretending they needed me, but I didn't say it that way. Instead I answered calmly, because I spent too many years confusing inheritance with love. They are not the same." Emily cried quietly. Ryan stood up. "This is unbelievable." "No," I said softly. What was unbelievable was how easy it became for my own children to forget me until they needed something. He said he needed air and stepped outside. Emily stayed, for the first time in years. She stayed. "I don't know how to fix this," she whispered. Neither did I, but for the first time, I believed she actually wanted to know, so I told her the truth. "You start by calling when you need nothing." She nodded, and that, more than the tears, felt real. Ryan left shortly after without hugging me. Emily hugged me at the door and held on a little longer than I expected. The weeks after that were quiet again, but not the same kind of quiet. Emily began calling on Sunday evenings. Not always long, not always easy, but real. Ryan stayed away for nearly 3 months. Then one morning he sent a message. "Can we talk?" No agenda. That may not sound like much, to me. It sounded like a beginning. "My name is Daniel Whitmore. My children abandoned me until they needed my money, and in the end, I learned something painful, but necessary. Money can bring people back to your door, but only truth can tell you whether they came home, or just came looking."